Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks, Kalen. I'm doing better today than I was yesterday, and better yesterday than I was the day before.
You know what? I am in the exact same spot as you.
That's amazing.
That's literally the sequence.
Really? Yeah. Did you start your week in a real downward spiral feeling?
Yeah. Just like so many moving parts. There's a lot of big stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of big stuff going on locally, regionally. It feels like there's a lot of battles to fight.
It does. And I mean, when you look at all the things that are facing us and then saying that we're going to fight them and battle them, I don't even know where to begin on that front, you know? And maybe that's what stresses me out and causes me not to sleep very well sometimes. It's just not knowing how to approach these issues.
Yeah.
And if you can approach them, how do you conquer them? And is it a fight is it our fight?
Is it a fight worth fighting? Is it something I need to worry about or whatever?
Is it so big maybe that we can't do anything about it, which is sometimes
some
how
of it
feels?
Yeah, I think some of it is. I think for me, and I guess this was, I talked about this, maybe it wasn't on our last podcast, maybe the one before, where I had one of my team members tell me to listen to the podcast, and it was about going back to basics and planning. And I think for me, how I've sort of positioned my battle, so to speak, is, you know, obviously you're paying attention to the global stuff. I mean, we in the restaurant industry, hospitality industry in particular, you know, there's an announcement that the United States is going to just automatically impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico.
Right.
Basically, like, for no other purpose but just to create chaos, and like it's not an economic plan. It's not one that makes sense. And then you hear that we'll retaliate with tariffs. And anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, well, as a business, we should kind of plan, because we import a lot of vegetables and a lot of stuff from the United States. So how does that going to impact our supply chain, our pricing to customers, and it'll literally lead to a global meltdown or slowdown in the economy, I think. So I'm trying to get my head around that, because, you know, I think as a business person, it's going to affect you. As a person who cares about people, it's going to affect you, because these things never end up well. And when you have I think there's incompetent people on both sides, but the idea that they're just going to march themselves off a cliff for no good reason, but you know, and I think I know why they're doing it. They're doing it so they can bait and switch and then just steal stuff behind the scenes, right? Like blatant corruption. But anyway,
that's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like. So when you look at those overwhelming, these big things, like, how do I even get going on this? And who do I yell at? Who do I scream? Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do I talk to my wife about it? Like, you know, well, there's nothing we can do to affect that. So what I brought it down to is just the basics, like back to the basics in our business. Like, let's forget all these big ideas for now, but let's go back and make sure all the big ideas that we had implemented are actually working, that the team registers, that it's effective. You know, rather than trying to look for the pennies you're going to save, just look at the operational efficiencies that you could create, which will then make the business run better, which make the customer experience better, and ultimately add more money to your pocket immediately. Because if those system things aren't tight, it doesn't matter if you find a penny here or a penny there. You're just bleeding it out the back door because you haven't set up the operational procedure isn't correct or isn't working right.
But what's a good example of an operational procedure that most restaurants could just go, oh, I heard that, now I want to implement it in my own business? Is it like, what's a good example?
Well, there's a few good examples. I think, you know, just getting back to our business, we used to have combos back in the day. So we used to be able to save a little bit of money by pooling a burger, a fry, and a shake, for example, or a drink of some kind, right? So after COVID, for whatever reason, COVID disrupt that. We took the combos off. We were all the reasons why, but we hadn't put them back. So we operationally adding those upselling opportunities, because a combo is technically an upsell, right? So that's an internal function that we didn't have. So there's no tools to train our staff to upsell. There's no call to action to have them upsell. The customer's looking at it and just going, oh, okay. Then they go to down the road and they can go get a combo somewhere else or whatever. Like we are elevated fast food, but we are fast food. So getting back to the principles of how you can make money in the fast food business is all those little upselling components, right?
I love talking to you. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot pre-COVID we had combos. We had a different combo every day of the week.
Yeah.
And we had little signs for them, which I still have in storage. Just have to bring them out and revisit.
Well, this is the type of thing. So there's another example is actually having some
awesome.
point of sale material in front to call to action to your customer. So it's a tool. So what we're going to do, so we did these combos. And the other thing, this is the second one, is a component of that, is we decided to bring the combos back. Our managers wanted the combos back. We thought it was a great idea. But then we rushed to get the combos back, and we don't really think through what we're doing, because the way we did it before, basically the pricing component and the costing was way different. So with inflation and all that, like we have to think of it differently, where we maybe gave a $1 discount before on a combo. We're going to do a $2 discount because of inflation, basically. And getting that call to action to the customer to bring some value to the customer, because there is value there. But from a business standpoint, making sure that the discount makes sense. Because when we first launched it, which we just did, I think last week, I think the combos went live maybe 2 weeks ago. And it turned out that if you order a burger, a fry, and a Pepsi product, you're basically just getting a free pop. Like there is we're just basically giving them a free pop because there's a $2 discount in that combo. Right. And it's like, well, what is the incentive? How does that impact our business positively? Like, so let's shift that and let's give a $1 discount for the basic combo.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get a fancy fry, or you're going to get a Pepsi, a Phillips soda instead of a Pepsi, you get $2 off. So then instead of going for the Pepsi, they can get an extra $1 by just going for a Phillips root beer, which is a premium product. It tastes better. It's local, so it supports local.
Yeah.
But then you get that added discount, right? So for us, we're putting an extra 50 cents in our pocket versus just giving away a $2 drink, right? Which doesn't do anything.
And I'm sure Pepsi wasn't going to come out and support that.
No.
And they weren't going to cover their ass on that.
No, of course not. So
and
we're
I
doing
don't expect Phillips to either,
Well,
but at least you're promoting a real local company.
Listen, it's about all of the missions, right? Promoting a local company. But why are you doing the combos? The combo should benefit the customer and benefit our business, right? So then the other idea that one of our managers came up with or thought of was, well, why don't we try to upsell to a shake and give them $3 off if they upgrade to a premium, right? So it's like a shake, it's $7.50, but we would give them $2 off anyways. But let's, instead of getting the Pepsi product or the Phillips product now, maybe they'll have a shake, so we can drive our shake sales, which then our average check goes from $22 to $24 or whatever, even with the $3 discount. Right?
I'll jump on board on that.
Yeah.
I'll give you a deal on your cold brew if you do that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm making a note right here.
Write that down.
Yeah, Sam deal
says free
on
everything.
Cold brew. Well, you know what? That actually makes sense because your shake is our highest cost shake. Right? Not by huge. It might be 20 cents more per shake.
Okay.
Than our other shake bases, right? So it's not we're happy to support you. Don't give me a discount. I don't want to give you charge me what you need to charge me.
But I think that if you were to do that, I mean, we're talking live on this.
Yeah.
But if you were to do that, then like any combo, if I participate in that, I sell more product as well.
Yeah. Well, then let's do it based on you selling based on volume, right? Yeah. And we can set maybe a little discount trigger when we hit a certain volume, because then that will help on our cost. Then because I love the idea of promoting this. So there's a prime example of something that we used to do that we didn't do. and 4 or 5 years of missed opportunity. And with inflation, we are premium burger. We don't apologize for that, but giving people some value and then increasing our sales that way, it's a win-win because that makes us more sustainable. But the message there is get back to basics.
Yeah.
Like, what is our core promise?
What made you who you are? Like, what?
Yeah.
What was the
how we
basic-
built
Yeah.
how we built our brand, how we're able to expand, and then just get back to basics. Because the other thing too is the team needs that little breather because there's all these little systems, and so we have these standard operating procedures, these SOPs that we put in place. So there's an SOP for combos. So we literally wanted to get the combos out really quick, so we did that. But also just take a step and just properly vet what you're doing so that you don't have to redo it or undo it or whatever. So it's launched, and then our manager says, well, we're just like, somebody's ordering a burger and a fry, and I want to upsell a drink, but we're basically just saying, okay, well, here's a free drink, here's a free drink, here's a free Pepsi product, right? And it's like the customer, we're basically just giving it, which is, sure, it's noble, but the customer will be happy with a $1 discount on that one.
Mhm.
They'd also be happy with a $3 discount on a shake, because if they want a shake,
Right.
that would be great. So that makes it a win-win for everybody. Right?
I remember you and the SOPs and remembering to go back to them when
Yeah.
you're going to do something
Yeah.
is a nice reminder of what we were talking about a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
About when you do forget that you have an SOP and you just go head on into something, and then you realize that, oh, I actually had a plan for that before that I forgot about. You should
Yeah.
dig that out and dust it off.
Yeah.
and take a look at it.
Take a look at it and see if it applies. And I think you need to review all of your procedures when you're in this stage of, like, it's like cleaning your room, getting your room organized.
Yeah.
So you're ready to start the day. Everybody feels better after they've cleaned their desk or their office or their bedroom or
Right.
whatever, and then you're ready to tackle the day. So just get back to base, and you can do that. Like my plan is to do that for the next year.
Right.
We're going to make sure every SOP we have in place is functional, working, doing what it was intended. The investment we made, so we've spent, I don't know, in the last 5 or 6 years, we spent about $300,000 in system stuff, like new POS machines and new management software. And we went through 3 different incarnations of it. Like, it was painful. We now have the main one, but we're using 10% of it. Like, we're not even using, so we've invested another $100,000, the last $100,000. It's all working. So operationally, it's not causing us any issues, but we invested $100K, and this thing is like a brain. It's got AI, it's got all this stuff that we're not even using. And so why are we adding some new system down the road or coming up with a new idea that we're going to shove down there when we're not even using the base system that we've already spent money on to its fullest? Right? Like, it's fun to do all these new ideas, and it's exciting to get them going, but you actually do yourself a disservice by just not focusing on the basics.
And the things that you already have.
That we already have.
And
That's not even doing, like, we're looking at average checks, we're looking at bill times, we're looking at, speed of service. We're looking at, last year's sales versus this year's sales, seeing trends. And then we also have to measure and monitor what is happening with our combos, right? Because we're now giving a bunch of value. So how does that increase our average check? How does that increase our daily sales? What does that mean to the bottom line? Right.
With a combo, and I think I'm pretty confident about the answer, but maybe other people wouldn't be. It feels like you're giving away a bunch of stuff with a combo,
Yeah.
or a bit of stuff. But does that actually increase your daily take? Because maybe that person wouldn't have had as much or wouldn't have chosen. And when you pick combos to promote, how much research goes into the numbers behind there so that you're not losing anything, really?
Well,
Is there a way to do that?
yeah,
that's easy?
well, you can look at it. Basically comes down to what you're selling and then how much you're making and then taking off the discount portion. So we have an app that also gives, like, if people use their app, or you don't even need to use your app to pay or anything like that, but if you show up and you open your app, and then there's a QR code that will give you points for any purchase you make. If you make a purchase with cash, you just scan your QR code on your app, and that gets recorded. So you get bonuses. So we basically give back like 6% value to our customers. That's a food cost item, right? So it's 6% at retail value because they're getting free fries, but it doesn't cost us retail, it costs us the food costs.
Right.
So you evaluate what the food cost is, you figure out where the discount goes, and then you can kind of figure out what's happening with your average daily check, right? So if your average check is $22 and you implant the system and then it goes up to $26 or $25, and then you see the bottom line of what it actually truly costs you, you should see a benefit to both the top line and bottom line. Right. So then you're actually increasing your sales, you're increasing your profit. Now, making sure that the combo makes sense. And this is the example is like the way it was flawed when we implemented it, because we were basically just giving away free product with no incentive for increase anything. So that was just a direct cost. So they were basically getting a free pop. Right. So this way we get to put $1 back in our pocket. The pop costs us 56 cents. So we're going to put 47 cents that we wouldn't normally have if they didn't order the pop combo, right? There's people that are going to order the pop combo anyways, right? So you could argue, well, you could make an extra $1 there. But the idea is that it's easier on their pocket. There's more of an incentive to order. There's more of an incentive to come back more often. So it's the algorithm of how people react to these types of things. And knowing that they can go and have a shake and get a bigger discount is way more sexy from a business standpoint. And then obviously you put that into the mix of how it affects your bottom line. And that's part of the thing is if you do not have a system that can calculate and give you that reporting, then you will be flying a little blind. Like you're going to implement that system and you could feel pretty confident that it's going to work because all the big successful guys make it work.
Right.
And they're doing it. So they've already done the work for you, but it's far better to have your own metrics of and data analysis of it. But if you don't have that system, just monitor your food costs, right? So something that frustrates me with our POS is that all the discount, any kind of discounts, even because we give staff meals, if you work in a shift, you get a free staff meal. So those things are true food costs. So, but they get billed out at a retail price on our system, and then then it gets discounted to zero on the back end. So we have this big discount column. So you look at that number, you're like, we're discounting $20,000 or whatever it is a month. And you're like, oh my God, how do we cut that? Or how do we do that? But it's added on the revenue side too, which I don't like, but because it is recorded in the food cost, right? The actual true food cost it's there already. So I'm kind of battling with my, in my head about understanding how that should be done. This is a little bit into the weeds of the business side of it, but you want to make sure that the data you're analyzing is accurate and it's telling you in a way that you can understand. So then you can actually see the measure and monitor component of it.
And then you can tweak as you go.
Totally tweak as you go. And maybe, it's perfect timing for us to be doing these combos in the winter because sales are typically soft. If we can generate some interest and some buzz, all of it is about the entire picture. So we're going to do a bunch of other different promotion things. And, and the other thing is like, we have these marketing ideas, but we just react. So there's Black Friday coming up. And we're in West Shore Town Center does a lot of support for the tenants here. And we've just been missing those opportunities because we just weren't organized. Right. So we force ourselves to do some stuff in this promotion thing, but we could do a way better job if we had an actual plan that we knew with a calendar. This is coming up 2 or 3 weeks. Let's figure out what we're going to do. A month or two before, we'll just know here's what we're going to do. And then we start thinking about ideas a month or two in advance of all these events so that we're ready to roll it out. We can measure and monitor. We can advertise it properly, and we can take advantage of these opportunities.
And if you have an SOP for all of that, then you can just do it the next year if it works.
Yeah, exactly. Or tweak. Yeah. And then you go back to the SOP and say, well, what worked, what didn't work. And that's where the measure and monitor component comes in. Right. So anytime you don't do one of these steps, then you're doing yourself a disservice. But what's keeping you up at night? Is that keeping you up at night? It should be keeping you up at night, But what's actually keeping us up at night is, well, we got to make payroll tomorrow. We're doing this. This person comes in and does this job. Do we really need that job? oh, well, it's $500 a month. Oh, maybe we can cut there. So you're tripping over pennies or tripping over dollars to save pennies, right? Versus focusing your efforts on making sure all your systems are functioning to its max. And then you can go and deal with the penny issue second.
Yeah,
Right?
because maybe if you're worried about the pennies, maybe there's something wrong with how you're doing your business.
Yeah,
anyway,
because
right?
well, sure, because it's really easy to go target this or target that,
Yeah.
but there's always trickle down impacts, right? And for Mind Time, your focus, like, would it be better to have really dialed in a combo plan so that you're actually increasing your revenue? You know, and maybe increasing your sales and then putting actually more money in your pocket, right? Or are you going to run around? There's multiple ways to do it, but are you going to run around and just squeeze every nickel out of stuff and not worry about the top line, not worry about the promotion, not worry about marketing, and not worried about like best practice in the business you're in? Like, what is the best practice in the coffee business? Like the idea that you've had combos and didn't have combos, you maybe had daily specials but didn't have daily specials, like all of that is impacting your business. But yet you're worried about cash and cash crunch.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
my team is worried about cash crunch. And I'm like, don't worry about cash. My job is to worry about cash. Your job is to make the system, because I do not want you to be worried about cash or saying, hey, do we have the money for this investment when this system and that system and this system aren't in place or are in place but aren't working right. Like, just focus on your core responsibilities, back to basics,
Right.
and then deal with those issues first. And then we can talk about where the money is, because guess what's going to happen? You probably are going to be less worried about those little tiny nuisance details that you try to make an impact, but when the real impact is actually just the basic core business you're in.
Right.
That's where you're going to make the biggest impact, the most long lasting, because once the system is functioning, it's part of your culture. You really don't have to worry about it. You just have to measure and monitor it to make sure it's still relevant to what you want to do. And then when you're bored, you can go through and sort of like, well, let's axe that cleaner bill, or let's axe this because, it's not efficient. Then for us, the other one is a maintenance plan. So we bought the store in Langford. So it's got existing fridges and freezers and stuff. And these things, there's like a cooling pack, I guess it's called, and they last like 10 years. So in our maintenance, we have a maintenance program, but we don't have a maintenance plan. And none of this stuff is measured or monitored. We're just reacting. The thing breaks down and it's a $12,000 bill.
Right. But if you were to maintain it might be $2,000.
Sure. Or we could budget it and say, okay, well, we bought this place. What is the year of this? So let's have a document. This is the year of this piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Okay, we can anticipate that breaking in the next 2 or 3 years. So let's put some money aside, right? Or let's get ahead of it and get somebody in to inspect it and ensure whatever we're doing to prolong the life is there, right? And that's where the maintenance kind of component comes in. And
planning, not reacting.
Yeah, and this is again going back to like have a maintenance SOP, have someone in charge of it, measure and monitor, look at it so you can understand it.
And it really does feel like these days there's just a lot of reaction. Like,
well,
I find myself
people are exhausted.
Reacting.
You're exhausted,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, and you have to, and that's why getting back to the basics is way less exhausting, because a lot of the stuff is that you've got in your business, you've had in your business for a long time.
Yeah, so you know it, you're familiar.
You know
with
it, you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
You know the language of how to talk about it to your staff. So then you just go back to that and just focus on that, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're actually doing something, because you're actually doing something quicker. You're working with an existing system and making it better or making it work. Versus taking all the time to create some newfangled thing that may or may not work, that may or may not require more investment, right? Which chews up cash, right? Like, just stop all of it.
Yeah.
Make sure all of your core systems are working, that you're happy with them. Tweak those first, right? And then see where your business lands and how the numbers add up.
Yeah.
Right?
Stop looking at the shiny things that you think are going to help, and just
everybody's got a good, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, Like we're always chasing this big next magical thing, right? And that's what fuels us as business people. But you need to take a breather, because as your business grows, you also have the effect of all of that with the people that are actually working. And they're looking at you like you're manic, you know, and
Yep.
you're doing this and doing that and go, oh, let's do the new idea. And they're like, well, what about this? I'm just figure it out. And now they just do it halfway and then it's really not there. And then guess what happens is a year from now, you're like remembering that system. You're like, why isn't that working? Well, because you stacked 3 or 4 more things on top of it. So there's no way it was ever going to work. When that system working would have actually made you money or moved your business that much further ahead, you're now a year further and you had the good idea. Finish the good idea, complete it, then measure and monitor it. That's it. Like I can come up with a million different ideas, and I do. And I'm my own worst enemy. I also have a main person, Yan, who moves 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like the words are coming out of my mouth and he's sending emails to execute.
Wow.
And I'm like, in some aspect, that's amazing.
But sometimes
it's
you
like,
have to wait till you're finished so
slow.
you can say no to it.
Yeah, and go, well, that didn't. It sounds like it's. And I stop him and say, stop, don't type. Let's just talk about it. Let's work it out before it's all of a sudden implemented. And so I sent out an email. I think I might have talked this on the show a couple of weeks ago, where I just was like, okay. I re-listen to my podcast. I'm like, back to basics. And so now we are all going back to basics, but there's as much work or more than if we were coming up with new ideas and implementing them. And this is just to work on the systems we already have, which tells you, wow, you already had all the workload you needed or were capable of handling with your current systems because they weren't done right the first time.
Yeah.
So light bulb moment. Right? Like just stick to basics,
right
which I think is a key understated thing. And I mean, I've been in business for over 30 years, and there's little peaks and valleys of where you're efficient and where you're, oh, okay, that's a good idea and it worked and you don't have to think about it anymore. But as your business grows, like I'm at the point now that our business will crumble if we continue on this path. And significant lessons should have been learned before we opened our Courtenay store. But now that I've seen the light, and this often happens, is you see the light briefly, but you're like, not sure if that's a train or the way out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So often it's a train coming down. Right, it's not the light at the end of the tunnel like you're on your way out. It's
the
a train
bomb coming right at you.
Coming right at you.
Yeah. Oh,
so the efficiency end of it and just completing tasks, I think, is something that everybody in business, especially now, because then you get back to the bigger things. So if you focus on that, you really feel like I feel like so relaxed. I feel like I'm dealing with stuff, and even I'm dealing with stuff by telling my team to slow down. And just make sure the room's clean and that all these systems are working the way they intended. And then, you know what? The ideas that we wanted to have done this fall will get by the time they're done, implemented, and ingrained in our culture, it'll be a year from now. And guess what? That is the correct way to do it.
Right.
For a million different reasons. And don't add any more things until that is done. Then you could come up with a new shiny object that makes it better.
Taking small bites.
Yeah.
Right?
You can't eat an elephant in a day. It's going to take months.
Oh, yes. Baby elephants are different.
Is there like veal? Is that like a...
They've only had elephant
Oh,
milk.
I love I saw elephants when I was in Cambodia.
Oh, yeah?
And the privately funded, like a real actual elephant reserve. Like they're just roaming around. There's no rides. There's none of this stuff. They're just in the natural environment, which is great.
They are such
and they're massive.
Oh,
yeah, they're so you look at them and you just feel peace.
Yeah, you look in their eyes and it's like, oh my God, there's a soul in there.
Yeah. You just the intelligence, you just see it and you're just like, wow, you could be looking at a human, right? But getting back to the idea of just focusing on the basics is key. So then you're dealing with the world stuff. So how do you properly think about it? How do you properly put it in a compartment so you're not keeping you up at night, right?
You think about the things that you can influence and do something about, and you think about all the things that you cannot do anything about and have no influence over. Compartmentalize those.
Yeah.
Work on what you can for your own self, whether
Yeah.
it's meditating or
Reading.
singing or
Yeah.
doing anything that makes you feel better about
Yeah.
the world. And with the other stuff, I don't know where that goes. I mean, it's still there,
But you know what the key?
compartmentalize it.
You know what the key is?
No.
Back to basics. Look in your community. So for me, I'm looking at, I can't control what happens as a country. I can't control what happens in the United States. I can't control any of that. But what I can control is how I influence our local decisions.
Right.
So for me, it was dealing with, obviously we have a foundation and we do a bunch of work with these charity organizations that help food sustainability, help the unhoused, help build some resilience in our community. But then battle with, like our podcast last week with Krista. So the spinoff of that discussion from our podcast, Krista and I exited Check TV, where we film and record our show, and we were asked to do an interview about the fact that the other communities around Victoria do not have an emergency weather response plan.
Yeah.
Except for Souk and Salt Spring. So 3, including Victoria, out of 13 municipalities have an actual plan to deal with a crisis of weather for people that are unhoused.
And even if they don't have a plan, is it not part of their budget anyway?
Well,
Or how does that work?
they have an emergency budget,
Right.
right? It's kind of a contingency, so they can draw funds and apply to get some of those funds reimbursed by the province. Because a lot of this stuff falls under the province and the feds. But emergency services is a responsibility of the municipalities when they have their own fire, and everyone has the community has their own fire, but sometimes the police is RCMP is federal, where local, like Saanich has its own police department, Victoria has its own police department, so they're responsible for the police budget. So those first responders are going to be the ones going out. So the fire department falls under that too. They're all provincially regulated and federally regulated in some cases with the police, but the actual budget is paid for out of those taxpayers. So we do this interview. I send an email to all of the councillor and mayor of Saanich because they're the largest municipality next to Victoria. They're bigger than Victoria population-wise.
In terms of population and size.
And size.
Well, right?
It's geography, they're the largest, I think, on the island. Maybe Nanaimo Nanaimo might be larger, but they have a significant impact. They have a significant budget. They also, by just laws of logic, have the largest unhoused population that would call Saanich home. But what they do is they ship people in crisis to beds in Victoria that fill. And then the beds they've got in Saanich are high barrier. So the only beds they have in Saanich, there's 25 beds at the Victoria Native Friendship Center, which obviously is an Indigenous organization. They prioritize Indigenous, which is fantastic. But the city or the municipality of Saanich is relying on them for to deal with their unhoused population and emergency response, but also when people need beds to shelter, like they need shelter, that's done there. But it's high barrier, so you have to be sober, all these criteria, which in emergency case doesn't work.
It doesn't,
right?
No.
And this is not like it's a new issue. It's been an issue that's gone on for like the last 4 or 5 years. So I took it upon myself because I'm frustrated with the way of the world. I feel like, and I don't think it's dramatic, so I'm just going to say it. The U.S. is going fascist. So all of the things that they're doing with attacking immigration, the next will be the unhoused people, of course, and they'll be vermin, and the language that is being used
is dehumanizing.
And that's how they prepare people to actually do dehumanizing things, right? So we had an incident at our store. We've had a couple incidents, like couple racist incidents. Like we've had 3 or 4 pretty serious things in our store in the last month. There's a rise in hate. So in Canada, right? And people have worn the red mega hats, and basically it's given them free reign to be assholes. So we had a customer come in that for whatever reason wasn't happy with something, but they purchased this thing like 3 weeks ago. A new manager basically said, well, we'll give you a refund or whatever. And I always want to make people happy, so that's fine.
Sure.
But they didn't follow some of our SOPs where it's like, let us deal with that person. Just direct them to email info@BigWheelBurger. We'll deal with it, address it. We'll find out where they ordered it, what their issue was, and decide whether it's, you get a refund or not. They come into the store. The manager that told them about this wasn't there, but our actual store manager knew the amount and stuff. Store manager is a new Canadian. She's of Indian descent, and he immediately she could tell what his issue, she could tell what type of person this was.
Sure.
Right? By her tone. He didn't want to deal with a female. So issue 1. And then basically was like demeaning her, and then went as far, like she gave him his thing, but she was like, where's your receipt? What is it? Like she was just doing, and she was like, this guy's a jerk. So why am I going to, but where she should have de-escalated. So we'll deal with that component of it. Like there should be an element of de-escalation training, which is in our manual. So that's a small detail of the point, because this guy is the one that brought the trouble. He starts yelling at her and tells her some racial slurs, tells her to go back to India. And then one of our customers, or multiple of our customers, stood up. One customer actually attacked him and chucked him out of the store, physically removed him from the store. Which we don't want that to be happening.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of hate. And we had another incident.
I also like hearing that people are standing up.
100%. And that
and
totally.
There's no call for that anytime.
No. And when we have a young staff in Courtenay, so I don't want them to see that. And just the idea that we have to start putting action plans in place for this in our country, which traditionally is the most I want to say kind of democratic. We've always had a social safety net. We've always led with the heart. This is what we do as a country.
We've always been a cultural mosaic, is it?
Yeah, cultural mosaic and accepting, and we're here for people. Like that's genuinely and we're seeing this behavior, and there's always been, but we've been doing this business for 25, 30 years. So we know how many times I can count on one hand prior to the last 5 or 6 years. And I can actually probably think of 1 or 2 incidents that didn't even rise to that level of hate that's been directed at our staff or our business or any of that kind of stuff. Where now, I think in the last 5 years, I can't even count the number of incidents. And in particular, the last 2 or 3 weeks. So for me, when you tie back to what you can do, you need the guardrails of our society and our standards. And where it starts with is protecting and ensuring that the most vulnerable in our community are looked after. Because that sends the message that it's not okay to not look after the most vulnerable.
And then can be translated to everyone.
100%, because you start working your way up again, right? And you hold fast those rules so that all of a sudden now your laws don't, our laws are already diluted to the fact, and it comes down to, this and that, and we got this person's rights and that person's rights and all that kind of stuff, which is great, but it erodes the rule of law. It allows municipal councils to make decisions they wouldn't normally make, or defend positions that are really indefensible. How do you not have excuse me, but since COVID, the number of homeless, and maybe they were always there, but as we move through the next 5 years, we're going to see that number grow because of what's going on in the States. Fascism and that type of stuff throughout history has never worked. It's always ended up in disaster, economic strife, wars, acrimony, all that stuff. And so what? We need to have our baseline care level set up and indefensible, like, or defensible, where it can't be broken down. And that starts with making sure that we're looking after the most vulnerable in our community, and then tearing it up so that there is not acceptable. Like, this person should never feel empowered to make that comment in a public place in front of everybody. He got his butt handed to him, but the problem with it is he should be charged with a hate crime, right? Like, we need to say this is unacceptable in our community, point blank. And I don't have the confidence based on what I've seen that people that don't have either lived experience or the right sympathy or the right angle. So I go to this council meeting, and I want to say I sent letters to the mayor and council of Saanich. I told them point blank what I thought about it and the ramifications of it, because this isn't just a human rights issue, although that is the number one most important part of it.
Yeah,
it is economic vitality for our community, because when you see Victoria, people don't Google Saanich when they're planning their trips. They Google Victoria. And if they read some of the state of our streets in Victoria, I mean, there's been people stabbed, and I'm not fear mongering, like, they're making improvement, but there is aspects of our downtown that is a cesspool. And how does that benefit Saanich? They've created a moat around Victoria where it's all Victoria's problem.
Yeah, the tourists aren't going to Saanich.
No, well, and they might, because we have there's amazing things all in our community. It's a great place to visit, but their first impression is what's impacting, and also making decisions. It's just like their decision to cancel Airbnbs, right? So now there's less places for people to stay. It costs more money to stay here. So they just make a decision not to come. And I think that was a direct impact of what we just saw this last summer, where
everything's down 10-15%.
Yeah, or more.
Or more, yeah.
Like 20%. And so, okay, there's a decision to try to solve a problem. And again, this goes back to basics and SOPs. Like, was that the right decision when you already had a hotel shortage to do that?
That decision was based on trying to create more housing, because they thought that people buying new condos were just not living in them. They were just Airbnb-ing them. But how many houseless peoples can afford to buy a brand new condo in Victoria?
No, all it did is just shift it up. And it wasn't the same thing.
It's not the issue.
It's a wrong approach, where it comes down to social housing. And the problem with it is they've waited on these investments. Like, and this is the frustration. And I talked to them in my email about it. And I actually spoke at the council meeting this past Monday. But none of this is news. This has been happening for 20 years. Canada used to have the best, the world acclaimed, world renowned social housing system. It ended in the 80s when the interest rates climbed, and they just sold all the properties. And social housing was like an afterthought when it was a priority prior to that. And then
totally lived in social housing growing
I
up.
did too.
Yeah.
I did too. And then all of a sudden you go to the mental health and the healthcare. Oh, budget cut. So they close Riverview in on the mainland, which was a mental health support. It was also where people who had serious mental health issues went, because they're a danger to themselves and a danger to the community. So now, and then also what happens in the early 2000s is I think that was the date, we're just making up numbers, but at least 25 years ago, there's all this privacy stuff. So now family members can't even find out about their family member who's in trauma or disaster or danger where they are, because it's private. Oh, no, we got to just, this person is incapable of looking after themselves.
Where you can only find out where they were if they were in the hospital or jail sometimes. And then you can find out anything else about them, where they were. But
their social workers and some of the community outreach workers know where they are, but they can't tell the person where they are because of privacy, so to speak. Right?
No, that's what I mean. You don't get the information until it's an emergency where they're either in the hospital or in jail. So
then you have these outcomes now where you're like, all of this is all lack of investment, lack of prioritizing these types of issues. And then now everybody's, oh my goodness, what? There's homeless people that might freeze to death this winter because of our temperatures are lower than they've ever been in winter in our area because of climate change. Like, oh, surprise, surprise. Are you joking me? Like, how is that even a statement that can be said?
Yeah, maybe it's not a lack of funding. It is a lack of funding, but maybe it's
prioritized.
It's because
These are
they
choices.
were defunded.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
not because we've never funded them before.
No,
when
they've
you
been
say
funded.
They're unfunded. It makes it sound like, well, it's something that we don't want to spend money on. Well, we always have. And
This is
now-
the problem,
now
is that we always
politicians
done it.
Years ago decided we weren't going to.
Exactly. And this is where, when you start moving away from the core promise, just like when we started the show, is back to basics. When a community doesn't deliver the basic needs of the community, of the people living in the community, both housed and unhoused, healthy or sick, mentally well or mentally, unwell, like, this is where we end up. And I'm sorry, I feel a lot of power having sent that stuff. They ended up passing. So the mayor of Victoria sent the letter to all the municipalities, asking them, pleading with them, begging with them, after 5 or 6 years of doing very minimal anything, to do something and start with just emergency weather response, which is basically when increase your bed capacity is the idea, but that's going to take a little bit longer. Like, it's not, you can't just create beds from thin air. Because you need partners, community partners, like nonprofits, you need space, you need all that stuff. You could figure it out, but just get ready for emergency warming center. Yeah. Like, just figure that out, like that basic thing. And even that, and this is what was frustrating me. So there's 9 counselors and they all get to talk and they do their stuff. So this thing, by the time it gets up for discussion and debate, it's like 10:15 at night, or it's late. Like, I'd already been there 3 hours, and there's literally me, and it's all recorded. So there's, people are live streamed, which is fantastic. Yeah. I love open, our system is open,
but no one's there in body, right?
So I'm the only one speaking to it from the community in favor. There's nobody speaking opposed, because how do you get up and say, oh, I want people to freeze to death?
Well, with your silence is how people do it.
Well,
right?
And this is it. So then so this is the danger of it. Thankfully, I'll speak to the end for it. They passed it, but you get this idea of they're going to thinking about a plan. I've got a concept of a plan that I'm going to think about. Right? Like, it's like, okay, we're going to do a plan. And then you've got the CAO, who's the guy who's the boss of the city and manages, he's the boss of everything, the fire, the police, the civil servants that work in the community and all that stuff. And he's just throwing, cold water on this whole thing the whole time, which provides a shield to the counselors where they can go, oh, great point, Mr. CAO.
Yeah.
There's budget constraints, there's staffing constraints, there's this constraint, every problem, every challenge in the book, right? Of a problem. I support us doing this, but let's do it smartly and let's take our time and build out a plan. Time, bro, when it happens, it's going to happen. And you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I get there's systems and the procedures and you got to do budgeting and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you have the guy who's the boss starting to put cold water on it, it protects everybody else from actually doing nothing. Right. Like, what should have been is like, this is a priority. And a couple counselors did say this. Like, said, promising. I get that's going to take time to build our capacity for shelter beds. I get it. But we should be able to figure out putting up a warming center or warming tent in emergency situations. Like, let's expedite that.
Yeah, Victoria does it through their fire halls, right?
Yeah, but this is what happens. This is the way so the fire chief's there, the deputy fire chief's there, like, they're all there. The communications person for the fire is there, and me. Right? There's only people left at the end of the thing.
By 10:15.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I kept like shaking my head and then nodding when I heard things that I was like, yes, to send the message, any way I can of encouraging the line of thought. But it just struck me that, there's a counselor that, was calling in from home, and seems like a very nice lady. I've never met her. I don't know her from Adam, but she just went on about something's lost in this. We need to really show support for the fire and the police, and they're the frontline workers. And they do such a great job. And when they respond to fires and they respond to emergency, like talking about issues that they deal with in the house community.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like,
which is all good and
that
fine.
no one is saying anything about that. But what it is, it's gaslighting.
Yeah. She's just putting up a shield. Well,
yes, because it takes off the focus of this needs to move fast. It needs to move quick. And we need to get it done this winter, right? Like all of the things you're talking about create roadblocks from actually executing on a plan. Yep. The city of Victoria does it with support of the community. They have a plan in place. The fire response people, the fire chief of Victoria is like, I'll give you the plan. These guys are talking about taking time to build a plan and we got to look at it. And I'm just thinking to myself, what kind of language are you talking about? And that comes from privilege when you're sitting in a house in Saanich.
You get to zoom in.
And you're zooming in. And
really
yeah, well, we got to talk about the details of the budget. And oh, yeah, this seems way big. Oh, we may not even be able to get it done this year.
It's like, oh, wait, well, let me put another log on my fire. Hold
yeah.
on for a minute.
Oh, yeah. I got to warm up. Oh, my temperature's not quite right. And I'm sorry, but it's like we got to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Do you know how many emergency weather events we have on average per year in Victoria?
I throw out a number. It's like 8 to 10, 5 to 10. Like,
okay, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, it's not huge.
Yeah,
it's will get worse. And I said when I spoke, and I wasn't actually prepared to speak. Like I wasn't thinking I was going there to speak. I was going there to witness. I wanted to look in the eyeballs of the people and what they were saying and what I thought their intentions were or lack of intention, or whether we had allies that were actually going to understand the emergency weather response. It's called an emergency. We have other emergency, which is dealing with the opioid crisis. We're still losing 150 to 200 people a month in British Columbia to this opioid emergency. This is what happens when you do not take serious your obligation to support the most vulnerable, period. Is you declare an emergency, I don't know, 8 years ago, and nothing has happened. Nothing's happened. It's actually gotten worse. So I'm sorry. It's time for us to say on a local level, this is our paradise. Who's going to protect your backyard if it ain't you? Right? So be informed, local issues, have your voice heard. And there's arguments. Listen, I get it. Our head office is downtown Victoria. We're in the epicenter of the mess.
Yes.
It isn't pretty. And it changes your view on humanity. It does. Like it just does when you just see repeated people just destroying their lives
every day
and also impacting the safety of the lives in the community there. Like I get it. But you cannot lose your sense of humanity. You cannot lose the sense of responsibility to try to make it work and make it better. Because if you do that, you're a stone's throw away from doing the most horrible things in the world that you can imagine. And if you're not holding the councillors, your local representatives to task, that's it. You start building at the base again and make sure that your community is protected, that they're looking after people, and that it's better here. Because then there's going to be less voices to those radicals, those racists, like the worst of us that get called out when they feel it's safe to do it. The mask, the hood comes off, and they're comfortable in doing that, which is not. And I said in my email to them, this is not a community I want to live in when it's like that. So guess what? I'm going to use my voice, whatever influence I have, to call it out. And you may not like to hear it, but do something about it.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear it, do something.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens. But
thinking back to how the province has closed down healthcare facilities, mental health care facilities, and and housing, and it's all because of budgets. Like at the same time, and at that same time when that was going on, we were privatizing our BC ferries.
Yeah. And
we were giving away that revenue. We were privatizing all kinds of things in the province, giving it away, privatizing BC Hydro, making it a crown corporation that is just a corporation.
Yeah.
I mean, that could, those systems, those crown corporations could be reeled back in, fire the CEOs who are making all this money in
Yeah.
garbage and not doing a good job as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And put that money where it belongs, back into the province.
But the thing about it is, I agree. But the thing about it is the money, the budgets, your budgets aren't, you're not saving. The budgets are growing year after year after year. The money just gets reallocated somewhere else. So guess where all the money goes to? It gets spent in the hospital, where these people who are in acute distress end up in the hospital. They end up in the policing service. They end up in the Department of Justice, or the justice, or whatever we call it here, in our justice system. And that's where the expense is. So either you build infrastructure and create some vitality and some resilience to these things, or you just spend the money over here, which costs you 5 times as much.
Yeah, well, it's 5 times as much in here's our numbers. It's 1,000 times less productive.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's not specialized.
Well, then guess what? Then
Right?
all of a sudden now you miss cancer diagnosis. A person can't
sure.
get in. You got to wait 8 hours in an emergency. You have a staff that is overworked, relatively underpaid for what they have to deal with. And then you're rinsing and repeating the people that are going in. There's a case recently where somebody was, over a 2 or 3 day period, they're in 3 or 4 times a day to be resuscitated from an overdose.
Yeah.
A day.
Yeah, no, I know
A day.
those stories.
Right? So it's like, what are we doing here? And again, it comes right back to the theme of the show. Get back to basics, man. What was working when we weren't having these problems, and recreate that.
Yeah.
And it is an overnight fix, but literally, come on, man, let's go. And part of that, you got to make some tough decisions in there too, but you have to start somewhere. You have to just, with the idea of just building back our social housing that we used to have. Because as we go through this, and history repeats itself, and I'm going to bring this up every time, the fourth turning, we will go through a significant economic downturn before we get out of this mess. And it may take the next 10, 15 years for us to see our way clear of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
That started 10 years ago. Maybe even started before that. Might have even started in 9/11.
It's a long
Bush.
cycle. Well,
It's a long cycle.
sure. In fact, in my political views, and from my age, it really felt like it was the 9/11 was a real turning point.
Yeah.
It was a turning point for government overstep and
Yeah.
overreach.
Yeah.
It was people just fell back and were scared.
Yeah.
The first time it felt like there was mass scared
Yeah.
in our lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about World War II.
No, of course.
And all that. That was very
Yeah.
scary times, but that was before our time. We don't remember that. This is
the problem.
This is our.
We don't remember. That's our World
Turn.
War II event.
It is.
COVID is our pandemic event. All of this stuff happened before. It happened right on time. Right, we're in the fourth turning.
We are.
Right, and this is where it comes down to strong people make good times. Good times make weak people. Weak people make bad times. We currently, whether people want to hear it or not, and there's exceptions to this rule for sure, we do not have strong leadership. We don't. We have people that are playing favors. We have people who don't want to put themselves out there for whatever reason. We got a bunch of cowards, frankly. Just take it. Like,
And that's globally and locally.
everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
That's all our leaders.
And what ends up happening is they get weaker because guess what? They haven't experienced hardship. And I'm not saying I've experienced hardship, but I read history books. I believe history repeats itself. So I can see the path forward. I know what's going to happen. And I've said from the beginning, I said like prior to Trump's election that the U.S. is very close to changing their political system into a fascist system or a dictatorship or a kleptocracy or any of these types of political systems that don't work. When you make an individual a king, all powerful, it doesn't work.
Which is weird when you have a president as a king, because that's like the whole reason you have a president.
Well,
so you don't
people
have a king.
have elevated him to biblical levels. And I'm just like, politics and religion need to be apart because these are core. This is how democracies die. Literally, they die in silence because people do not have the backbone to stand up for what's right. And journalism is a part of that. Taking care of your most vulnerable is a part of that. Public communication and advocacy is a part of that. And when you start stamping all that out and allowing the hate to brew, you're surprised how many people have those views. And some of it, they were born that way. They not born that way. Nobody's born with hate. They learn it, right? Yeah. So we need to create a community that doesn't allow that to happen. But we've got safeguards in place. And right now is the time that Canada in particular has to double down and stand up and say, we will not go that way. We are going to hold firm on what our fundamentals are, who we are as a people, because we're going to see some stuff down south that is going to be ugly.
Yeah, and it's going to make our heads turn.
It'll make our heads turn, and it should. But you know what? Also, we're going to get complacent with it because we're going to see it, and then we're going to numb to it. We're going to feel powerless, and then if we allow it, it will roll us over.
We'll just slide right into it.
And we will slide right in. And you're seeing evidence of it.
So who I think I know the answer. Can you see anyone on the horizon in Canada who's willing to do that?
No,
me neither.
And this isn't partisan. This isn't one or the other. But when you have a current government, like the opportunity was the second Trump came into power, is you showed a strong. We never even negotiated a softwood lumber treaty. Right? Like there's things that we just never did, or we just, whatever. There's no time to wait on some of these issues. Like you have to deal with it. Regardless of what that means, you have to dig in. The problem with it is, and even, bolstering our military is something we should be doing in this environment. Like you should just do it because it's not, the world isn't like it is before. And it's so much it's so easy to go, let's just join them, or, I agree with them, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Like the policies aren't viable. They've never been viable. And all you have to look at history. And I'm not saying the way we've got it now, there's corruption and there's things that need to change, all that stuff too. But the alternative is way worse. And, even when it comes to whether you're going to vote conservative or vote liberal in our country, because those are really the only viable options. The NDP is not really a viable option. The Green Party isn't really a viable option. You need to be picking people that have backbone, but also understand what the mission is. The mission is to protect everybody in our community.
They need to see it clearly.
Yeah, clearly. And if you could argue over the points on how to get there, but they must have a strong backbone, a strong ethic, and understanding what's at stake.
It's a value system.
It's a value system that I think, generally speaking, we have all had. Like, even though we haven't suffered, like I think COVID was a suffering. I think our younger generation through this are going to be much better. And this is where the fourth turning happens, is once a fourth turning ends, the new turning begins. And the people that have gone through COVID, a depression, whatever else is going to come when the U.S. is full on fascist, all of that stuff will say never again. And they will build back the systems, the structure, the compassion, and then they'll just wash, rinse, and repeat. And we'll find ourselves here 100 years. We won't be here.
But in that first bit, they're going to be the creative ones. They're going to be the ones who are going to turn the ship around.
Yes.
They're going to come up with new ways to do what we've always
done.
And
what ends up happening, and it's human nature. Like all of this is explainable by human nature. We react to inputs the same way.
Yeah.
Like technology changes and efficiency, all this kind of stuff that has some impact, but humans in general react to trauma the exact same way. That trauma will then speak to the future leaders that have gone through that trauma. And they'll be like, never again. They'll know the repercussions of war. They'll know the repercussions of depression. They'll know
it's fresh. Something that you have to read in school.
Or you read it. Who cares? Like the idea that people aren't focused on history is why we keep repeating it, right? And there is a bit of like, okay, well, that's just going to happen, and that's true. But we can prepare ourselves.
Some things feel like they are inevitable, but you're right. If we stop and we all think this way, then we can prepare as a people and individually. 100%. We can prepare in our communities.
But what a better journey! What a better experience to try to help all people here. you know, and then just try to be better, but also just be firm and take some risks. Like it's risky having these positions. It's risky voicing it. But you know what? You know what's more risky? Not
doing it at all.
because all of this dies in silence. And then we wake up one morning and we're like, what are we doing? Where was it like when I grew up? They talk about make it great again, make whatever great again. There's very few periods in history that history was better than where we are today.
Yeah. What
was great?
Period.
What's
do you
great?
want?
Like racism, like women couldn't vote, archaic
slavery.
You know what was great? It's our social safety net. Okay, let's make our social safety net great again, right? Like let's lean into what has made us who we are as a country, and then that will actually put us in a way better spot when all this stuff happens, and we can just be, whether we're on an island with it, and just don't let, and because we have to push back. You have to push back, or it just runs us over. And there isn't a leader I can see in this country that has the stones, male or female, to be that person. So
it's kind of a conundrum when, or it's a catch-22 sort of, when an isolationist policy like the Americans are taking create whatever it's going to create. And our reaction to it is to be isolationist and be on an island and do our own thing. But there are two different forms of isolationist. One is almost aggressively isolationist, and one is a defensive, like pull yourself into your turtle shell and make sure your house is warm.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, and I think that's an amazing point, because I am going to use Chat GPT to figure out what the ideal response to tariffs is.
They're going to say, give Bill Gates more money.
No, probably. But, or Elon Musk more money.
Yeah.
Or Jeff Bezos more money.
All of them.
All of them more
All
money.
the billionaires.
All the billionaires that just really have compassion.
Yeah, they'll
in their
just take
heart.
care of it.
Yeah, they're just so compassionate.
Would you like to answer any other questions, sir?
Yeah. They won't even give me an answer probably. But so 25. So getting back to the business component of our show, which the one thing I love about our talks is that we always seem to stay on theme, even when we take these tangents, because it's applicable.
Bigger and smaller.
Yeah, bigger and smaller, but the baseline of what our topic is just back to basics. So what is the best basic strategy to deal with imposed tariffs, like blindly? Because this isn't about an economic, like we have to remember this, there's back in the day when tariffs are put in place to protect domestic industry. So that's why tariffs exist. So they're paid for by the consumer in the country that the tariffs are delivered from. So the US customers will be paying 25% more goods, more 25% more on goods purchased from Canada and Mexico.
And the idea is that it's consumer driven, so the consumers will stop buying products from Canada and Mexico.
That's right.
Meaning that those industries dry up as a result.
That's
right. It's not the U.S. government knocking out these businesses. It's consumer driven.
It's all consumer driven.
However,
so those tariffs, the idea that those tariffs. So what ended up happening when the last time Trump arbitrarily put tariffs on China, like just and this happens because you don't understand what you're doing, right? Like the point blank, you just do not understand tariffs. Like we're going to charge them and they're going to come. It's as if China is paying those prices.
Yeah,
it's
how
just
he describes it in his own words
it's just garbage.
It's just not right.
No, it's not right. So when you have that being blanketly thing, so what ended up happening is China punished the farmers in the U.S. They put a tariff on soybean exports, and all that money that was collected from their own people it's a tax, went to the government, went back twice as much to support the soybean farmers that were getting punished by China. Who won in that? Nobody wins. Because we're in a global economy, whether we like it or not. Back in the day, so the last time there was isolationism and protectionism was prior to World War II. Yeah. Right? Guess what happened? Rise in fascism, World War, Great Depression, all of that stuff. Between World War I and World War II, there was a Great Depression. Yeah. World War II shook everything up. We lost millions and millions of people. There's horrible, atrocious things done by fascist leaders, right? Fascism was wiped out mostly after that, right? And then you have this peace and prosperity that grew from that. We're just back in the exact same boat. We've got isolationism, and what leaders do, we're going to do the same thing. What I'd like to think about is let's be a little nuanced about it. So we know that if we put tariffs on U.S. goods, they're our number one trading partner.
Yeah.
So there's them putting 25% blanket tariffs on us will hurt us. But if we just do that back to them, that's going to hurt us again.
It hurts us doubly.
It hurts us doubly because we're going to be paying tariffs. We're paying tariffs on stuff that we import. We're losing business on stuff that we export,
which is almost all our food.
Which is all our food, right?
Yeah.
So why not
That's
just
important.
okay, we're going to do a tariff on this. We're going to do a tariff on this, but we're not going to do a tariff on the other stuff.
Like what is America importing most? Is it auto parts? Is it
it's auto
lumber?
parts, it's food, I think
Is
food.
it food?
Well,
Is
food's
that-
pretty big. Like we
I mean grains, I guess, and
grains, we like all of our lettuce are a lot of our vegetables come from the States.
oh no, I mean going the other way. Like
going back?
Like if we were like, what are Americans buying from us?
Softwood lumber, oil, gas, what else?
but all
some packaged
basically
goods.
So basically, all things they can do without.
Auto parts. Well,
I mean,
no,
food,
they're
like
going to be impacted greatly.
I
Like
mean,
wheat.
comparatively though, like if we stop being able to buy American food and bring in vegetables and produce, we're kind of screwed because that's a life sustaining thing that we've grown dependent upon. Right?
All of
Like
what
food.
it well, this is
But auto parts aren't life sustaining.
no that. But when people need to buy more stuff, it's going to cost us more.
Yeah.
Which means it's inflationary. So we just going through this inflationary period, and we're basically just going to march right back into it. The U.S. making that choice, our reaction and our instinct is just we're going to match the tariffs and blah blah blah. But that just punishes ourselves twice.
Well,
Right?
that's what I'm saying. There's no use in retaliating because they don't really have they're not importing anything from Canada that they can't really do without.
Well, no, that's not true. So
Okay.
that's
what
not
they
true.
really need is water from us.
Well, they need water, they need oil, they need gas.
Do they?
100%.
Okay, I thought they were
100%.
pretty
They buy
self-sufficient, or
no.
They're
No.
buying elsewhere.
They especially when it comes to natural gas,
Yeah.
they flow it from Canada right down. They buy it at a discount. They flow it right down to Texas,
Oh, okay.
and then they export their LNG that way. But they're also using our natural gas. They also use our heavy oil for petrochemicals and all that kind of stuff. It is a big industry that they're a number one trading partner.
Sure,
So-
when it comes to dollars, I'm just thinking about food. What do we need to live? And food is something you can't do without. And putting the price up on food is not the same thing as putting price up on auto parts.
No, I agree, and especially when it comes from the industries that we're in.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about all of our supply chain. Where do we buy it from? Because if it's all going to go up 25%, I want to look at. I mean, we have an urban garden, it's just on Bay Street that produces awesome lettuce. So
Yeah,
can we
get
buy
mine
all the
now.
lettuce? And it's. I'm actually working with them to figure out their pricing strategy so that they can make money and the restaurant can support them. Restaurants can support them. So maybe we increase capacity there. So we open a few more of these gardens, and then we're able to be more sustainable. But this is what it's about: resilience, about sustainability, but thinking about how it's going to impact us, because it's happening. This is mark my words, bookmark this podcast. It is happening. We're going to be dealing with the ramifications of that one way or the other. So let's just get ready for it, and let's prepare ourselves. Let's figure out what we need to do and how we can do it. But also on a bigger picture is making sure that our leaders are doing it in the right way. Getting into a trade war with the United States, it's I don't know, I'm
so
going to do a
dumb.
little bit more thought on that, because it's an interesting economic discussion and debate of whether we could just say, okay, well, what is the most important, just like what you said, what's the most important to them that we give them?
Yeah.
Target that,
Water.
right? But then just let whatever else come in and no tariff. So our importers aren't having to raise the price,
Sure.
so that we can get it at a good value, and then we can just be looking at them as because they're not just doing it to us; they're doing it to Mexico. We'll let them do whatever. If Europe wants to do a retaliatory, nobody wins in this. Like nothing's going to happen except it's going to distract everybody, and then they're going to go and just rob and steal and change all the laws and rules and all this stuff. When everybody wakes up from this nonsense, they're going to realize what they thought was their country is not their country anymore. That's why they do this stuff.
So does Canada start to look for different trading partners?
Well, we've already done that. We've already done that, and
do we double down on it?
Well, of course, like that's naturally what you do.
Okay.
The problem with it is they're our closest. Like, there's costs, there's climate impacts of all that stuff. Like, it's not easy just to turn it on. Like, you go from November 5th and you hear all the rhetoric. If he doesn't win, we've got other issues that we got to deal with, but 25% blanket tariffs and an absolute moron who's running the ship and all these other weak people but below him who are not keeping him on guard. They never kept him on guardrails before. The only good thing is they're all not very smart. So their effectiveness of what they're going to do is going to be very clumsy. So, and they do have like a court system. There is a way, but I don't think he intends to not be. Maybe not him, because I think he's probably going to be past his time. But the next person that's going to, just jump on the same ship with the same mantra, right? That might be smarter, which is even more dangerous,
scarier,
right? So
sure.
I think, for us, I think we just need to know what's going to happen or what most likely will happen, and then just be prepared, right? But that starts in our community, right?
Yeah.
That starts where we are first, and not worry about the other stuff. It's going to happen. And we're going to go through some stuff, but we are going to come out of it and we will be stronger for it. And maybe if we keep talking about the fourth turning and people read and believe that history repeats itself,
or at least rhymes.
Yeah, well, we'll be in a better spot, just like your business. Like history repeats itself in business too. Yeah. So let's remember what happened the last downturn, and we've been in business long enough to have gone through a bunch of downturns, right? So trying to pay off high interest debt, try to keep your investment decisions loose in this time frame is good. It's where you're not deploying a bunch of money that's going to be sitting there for 5 to 10 years, which you might need now in case of like sharp spikes in costs and all that kind of stuff. The economy is not going to survive. Where it is today will not survive what's about to happen. Like, it won't. The end of it will be either depression. I mean, we might even see deflation, which is as bad as inflation.
Yeah.
So just get caught up to speed on, like, Google some of these terms: deflation, inflation, tariffs. Just understand what it is, because understanding will allow us to be better prepared.
Well, and they're being thrown out there as buzzwords all the time, right? And they lose their value if you don't know what they mean. You just hear them, then you don't think about.
Yeah, well, you just, it's someone else's problem or whatever. And we have way more control than we think. And, if we don't use the control we have, then we lose any power that, to change anything. And then we just are just on the ship with someone else controlling it. And then like, oh yeah, this sucks. Like, there's going to be a whole bunch of people. Like, the funny thing about it is in the U.S. specific, all of those states that are primarily, Trump supporters or Republican or GOP or MAGA or whatever, rely heavily on subsidies that are provided by the federal government.
Yeah, right.
So all of those subsidies are at risk. So they don't have vitality. They have the worst outcomes almost in everything: employment, healthcare, education, all this stuff. So guess what's going to happen? They're going to be like, wait a minute. And they're talking about the price of eggs and Democrats are communists and socialism and blah, blah, blah. They're the biggest benefactor of socialism anywhere. The U.S. has the largest socialist budget in the world, which is their military, and Medicaid and, Social Security and all that kind of stuff. So the idea that, socialism is bad, they're benefiting from it. But the states that are the most for this, they're just acting against their own interests. And not to say that there isn't issues on in the blue states and all that stuff. And sure, we've turned ourselves into a big pretzel. But when you look at actual impacting lives and doing things that are going to help people,
it is probably going to hit the red states hard.
It is, but then they're going to somehow turn it around and blame like Joe Biden, who's not even president anymore, or they'll blame Obama, or they'll blame Clinton, or whatever. Like, it's just like gaslighting, right?
Yeah.
So we have our own issues here. So hopefully we can see our way clear. I don't know. I don't see it at all. I don't know how we're going to withstand any of this. But at the end of it, I guarantee you the next generation of people that are going to be going through this, so they're maybe, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13, they'll be the future leaders that will have seen this. The lessons are the same. They keep repeating themselves, and humans adapt, and they're like, wow, let's not ever do that again. Here's what we need to do. Let's,
we just have to teach our kids to teach their kids.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how you break cycles.
Yes, you teach your kid and you remind them of the history repeating itself,
and don't
make
forget
sure
to tell your kids.
Yeah.
And don't forget to tell your kids to tell their kids.
Yeah.
That's where it gets diluted, and that's
Exactly.
when you get the
like history is
right?
history is a roadmap to the future, right? So I think that's an important thing that we can't lose sight of. We've lost sight of it, but
there's so much in the world to talk about right now, and I know we're well over time. We've done the global stuff really quickly. In Canada, our government is offering the people a tax break from the GST, a temporary tax break for 2 months over the winter period. I've got my feelings about it. I'm wondering if, from a business perspective, having to go through and change all our POSs, having to pay our bookkeepers and accountants to figure this out for us, because we're not going to do it ourselves. Where's the real benefit? Is that gaslighting as well? Is that just waving a shiny thing over here and then sticking it to us over here some other way?
It's basically trying to preserve your electorate as heading into an election year. That's literally what it is.
Yeah, fair.
And unfortunately, just like all the other stuff that they do, which is knee-jerk reaction to long-term problems, short-term reaction to long-term problems. Yeah. We have a long-term issue with fairness in our economy, fairness in our taxation system. Yeah. All of those things are a problem. While they're giving a temporary GST tax, they're increasing our carbon tax. Right? So the taxation system in our country is in my opinion, is just messed, because if those carbon taxes actually went to, like, they just go into general revenue, and I guess some people get money back. I don't know who these people are. I don't know any of them. Maybe some people do. Maybe you do. I don't.
No, because we're in BC, we opted.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The federal one. We've got our own provincial one, which doesn't give us money.
Oh, gotcha.
So there are people in Canada who do get money back.
But also we are importing things from other provinces that are subject to that tax, which get built into our price here.
Of course.
We're getting paid and we're getting, so that's clear why I haven't got any money back.
Exactly.
Right? But I don't care. If you're going to do it, just do it efficiently. Like, if you're going to take the money for this purpose, I believe in climate change. I believe in climate action. But where's the mitigation fact? And this is the issue I also brought up with the emergency weather response. That is a climate mitigation initiative. We would, when the last, or one of the atmospheric rivers that we had that destroyed the dike,
in Vancouver.
They buried our farm. We want to talk about resilience in our agriculture and food. We should have invested in repairing the dike like the Americans did.
The Americans right across the border didn't have that problem.
No, exactly, because they repaired the dike.
Yeah.
So this is mitigation stuff, man. So if you're going to do taxation, put it in the right stuff. Yeah. Like, come on, make us resilient.
Don't waste our money.
No, and again, the amount of effort that's going to go, like, sure, there'll be webinars and seminars on how to change your PO. Like, we're already dealing with it, because we have to deal with 3 different things when it comes to how people get food from us.
Yeah.
Right. And all of that has to be like temporarily just remove it. Like, they need to support hospitality businesses. Like, they're already messing with us on the immigration side because they're changing the rules with immigrants that are here. That'll be on a future podcast. But stop messing with us, man. Especially
Yeah.
in BC, we have an employer health tax, which
Oh,
is just insane.
so gross.
Like, come on, like how much more can we take when we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with labor issues, we're dealing with immigration issues, and we're dealing with wanting to put out good food for people and food sustainability, like, and quality of life, man. Like, this is where breaking bread and enjoying people's company is done at the dinner table.
Food of any kind should not be taxed in any way, in my opinion.
No,
It's
100%.
Food, water, heat,
100%.
housing.
So yeah,
no-
do I
no tax.
support the fact they're removing the GST on food and restaurant and that? Yeah. Should it be permanent? Yeah. Like,
I don't support a temporary relief on
No.
it. I would only support it if it was permanent
100%.
and if it was broader and
Yeah.
actually covered things that we need to live.
100%.
Things like that should not be taxed. And you're right; that would have such a great impact on the hospitality industry.
Yeah, it would save
if
everybody
was targeted.
5%.
Yeah,
And I saw a comment on the hospitality Facebook page that basically said restaurants are going to take advantage of this break. Something like,
oh my
Okay.
God.
like I can't remember who said it or whatever. I just remember reading it. And I'm thinking to myself, so what if they do?
Yeah,
That'll
maybe
still
they're
mean they may make
freaking desperate.
3% instead of negative 2%. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? And how does that even work? You're going to raise your price? Like, you're removing a tax that's added on after your goods. Like, you can't keep that tax on there and then just pocket it. So, how are you taking advantage of the situation?
Well, I guess if the government's not watching for those 2 months,
you
could.
know what it is, though? It is probably on the very small number of restaurants that build in their tax into their pricing.
into the pricing. Yeah,
We
they
used
just
to
don't
do
change
that
their
back in the
pricing.
day.
Yeah, I did that where things were $5 or $10.
Yeah,
no tax.
Exactly. No
'Cause
tax.
It
It
was
was just
included.
included.
Yeah,
So that would be the scenario, but I don't think that's by and large the case because after HST that shifted.
it did.
Yeah.
And then that was another great temporary tax, eh?
Oh, it's just beautiful.
They keep moving the goalposts, man.
Yeah, exactly.
How are we supposed to keep up, man?
Again, weak leadership. This is all the signs are staring at us in the face and have been for years, but yet we find ourselves here again.
This flip.
We don't find ourselves. This is the first time we've gone through it because this is where we are in our life. But
It's not the first time that the
the
country's
world,
gone through
yeah,
it,
the country, the world, the globe, all that kind of crap. Anyway, this is a very expansive conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think we offended too many people.
Well, we shouldn't have. What we're
shouldn't.
talking about is real,
Yeah.
and our opinions are what they are.
Well,
Shouldn't
this is
offend
our
people.
show. We get to say what we want.
Right? Oh, thank
We get to
goodness.
make up all the facts and the fictions
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Aw, yay! I bet there's not even a book called The Fourth Turning, is there? We've been talking
made
about
it
it for
up.
3 years.
I made it up.
You made me read that fictional book, and I've been pretending with you ever since.
I know. You fooled me. Fool me once, shame on me.
Yeah.
Fool me
You know, it's
twice, shame on
spell
you.
potato with an E, or
Ooh.
no, no, I don't know how that dank whale joke works.
So next week we're gonna have a guest on, Mara Jernigan.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Yeah, it's
exciting.
going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. She has an expansive knowledge in food and hospitality and great insights. And, I believe she was the original founder of Feast of Fields.
Yeah, she's a foodie with a capital F.
Yeah, foodie with a capital F. So that'll be fun. So we'll get back to less dramatic topic.
Maybe my heart will slow down.
Listen, just remember, let's just go back and clean a room, man.
I'm
Let's
going
get
to.
back
You
to
know
basics.
what? Well, while you're talking about that, I forgot that I used to do espresso for free on Saturdays.
Yeah.
It's like that was such a great deal.
Yeah,
you know?
totally.
Like,
And the
it
thing
was so
about it,
fun.
and you get people in the store and they buy a sandwich and they do
Yeah.
this and
And
you
it's,
create some buzz,
Yeah,
man.
it's a value add. It was something that
Yeah.
we were doing that other people
Weren't
weren't
doing.
doing. Sets you apart when you do things like
100%.
that. Right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
You can't forget that. Thanks for the
No,
reminder.
just getting back to the basics, man.
And I want to throw a thank you to my new friend I was talking to this morning about this very topic as well.
See, it's
Thanks.
it's
Yasser.
weird how the universe, relates.
Yeah, I guess
Connects.
we're all kind of on the same page because we're all riding this plane of
Yeah.
weirdness right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. No, I mean it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And-
So it's a good time to reach out to the Bread and Butter Collective if you need help, have questions,
Yeah.
want some advice.
100%.
Not that we can
Info
solve
at
your problems, but-
breadandbuttercollective.com. Our website's breadandbuttercollective.com.
and we are here to help navigate with you.
100%. Like, we're not the experts on these issues, but we have opinions,
We have experience.
and we'd like to chat through because there's probably a bunch of new ideas that we haven't even thought of.
And thank goodness it's not just the two of us. It's a breadth of ownership.
100%. All smokal. All local
Oh, no, that's after 420.
Oh, yeah,
then we're all
smokal.
smokal.
Let's get some smokals on.
Man, let's just do some edibles instead.
I love edibles.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, wow. Hey, here we are.
They're legal.
They are so, and they're good for the heart.
Are they?
Well, that's my medical advice for the day. Take
Oh,
it or
yeah.
leave it.
Good. Okay. Do not take our medical
Take it or
advice.
leave it.
Yeah,
Really,
leave it.
just
Please
leave
leave
it.
it.
Kaylin,
That's awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. That was a great one. We talked about a lot, and yeah.
We always keep on the theme, though.
Well,
I wonder if other people can can follow our path and think it's the same theme, or are they just like, what are these guys talking about?
well, we're
get to
nothing
talking.
except thematic, I guess.
Yeah,
Bread and Butter
we try to-
Collective's
we always
membership
think- try to
includes the
leave it
following
back, right?
local businesses.
Well,
2% Jazz,
we're going
Bunny's
to,
Kitchen,
but-
Yeah, Bread
Buzz
and-
Coffee
Meeting
House,
at 2 o'clock.
Eagle Eye,
Excellent.
Big
I mean,
Wheel
it'll be over
Burger,
by the time anyone
Blue
listens.
Mountain Solutions,
Yeah, but
Bodega
at least
Tapas Wine Bar,
we're going in. We're
Eva
gonna
Schnitzel
be
House,
the start of a
Farms
support
Gate
network
Foods and
for
Catering,
anyone who needs help.
Victoria
That's right.
Chocolate and
And we're
Company,
here for
Drum
each
Roaster
other and
Coffee,
others, so-
Habit Coffee,
Being
Foo
Thank you
Asian
for
Street
being
Food, the Culinary Arts
real
Program at
Real
Camosun,
nice.
Cafe
you, Sam.
Fantastico,
You're welcome,
Full
Kaylee.
Epi, Harold Street Brew Works, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-inspired catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.